Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exclusive PWMania.com interview. I am always yours truly, Ari Barkin, and today I am so thrilled to be joined by former WWE superstar, the one and only, someone I consider the golden chin, James Ellsworth.
Ari
James,
Barkin, that's your name. What a cool name.
thank you so much. You got an even cooler name. And James, thank you so much for joining us today, especially on the eve of what promises to be an exciting Money in the Bank event in London this time around, an event that you have history with. But before we get to that, everyone wants to know, what has James Ellsworth been up to?
Oh man, I still wrestle in the independents, do a lot of shows all over the country, mostly at like festivals and stuff. Like I help book shows at these festivals everywhere. Like, I mean, if you follow my social media, you'll see like just doing that all over the country. Spending time with my family. I have two daughters, and I got married in April of 2022. So I've been
Congratulations.
enjoying time with my wife and kids, and still hustling on the independents.
Amazing, amazing. And you have a quite impressive story, one that has a very big detail that needs to be mentioned. In 2014, you kind of entered the WWE picture, being one of Adam Rose's Rosebuds. Can you tell us how WWE approached you to do that? And we'll get going from there.
Well, yeah, it's like I tell everybody when WWE is in your area, let's say like 250 miles or less, and people have traveled farther, you can email them if you're an independent wrestler, an aspiring wrestler, to try to be an extra talent on the show, if it's Raw or SmackDown, and just send pictures or whatever, and they'll take almost anyone to do that. Like, and when you get there, it's the luck of the draw. Like for the Rosebud thing, they were using like 6 to 10 guys at a time, and they're like, "Here's the costumes, guys. Pick one." And I'm like, "Well, I'm definitely picking the cheeseburger one." So, um, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. I remember like Zelina Vega was a Rosebud when I did it. There's a picture of it
Wow.
somewhere. I'm sure you guys could probably find it, track it down. You guys are smart. All right. Yeah, that's basically it, man. Like any independent wrestler can do it, right? It doesn't, you don't have to be like crazy talented or anything. Like it's like it's a TV show. Raw and SmackDown are TV shows, just like any other TV show. They need extras. They need people in the background, people to pretend to be security guards. Sometimes you get a match out of it, get beat up real quick, like. And it's all just the luck of the draw. It's not like, oh man, this guy's the best guy on the Indies. We need to use him to wrestle right now and get beat up by whoever. It's just that's a lot of luck goes with that.
Sure. And I learned something new there, right there. So, going more into that now, as you entered the real James Ellsworth hemisphere in WWE, your first singles match was on July 25th, 2016, when you impressed the WWE Universe against another Rosebud, former Rosebud, Braun Strowman. Your message, quote, "Any man with two hands has a fighting chance," resonated with a lot of people and created a cult following for you. Resonated with me, certainly. Do you expect this kind? Did you rather expect this kind of reaction?
I mean, you can't ever expect something like that, right? Like I remember when Jimmy Jacobs, who was an amazing writer, he's I heard a rumor he's helping with creative for AEW now, and if so, good for them because that's a good get. Jimmy Jacobs is amazing, and he was the writer for that match. And I was very fortunate to get a promo, which they did it every week after that with Braun Strowman for like 6 to 8 weeks, where basically when you were the extra talent getting beat up by Strowman, you got to say your last words before he killed you. And I remember asking Jimmy Jacobs, "Hey man, can I say any man with two hands has a fighting chance?" Which is kind of like I stole it from Rocky Five. He's Rocky says in Rocky Five, "Oh, if you have two hands, you have a chance." That was the line from Rocky Five. So I put my own little spin on it. And when I remember saying it, and I remember it felt good. I didn't think it would turn into this crazy thing, but I remember it felt really good as I said it for sure.
Sure, sure. I love that. And later that year, you reappeared on SmackDown and bewildered fans as you entered the title picture. Long story short, everybody knows what happened, but who approached you about eventually facing AJ Styles for the WWE Championship? And was
Uh,
this always, I'm sorry, let's answer that first.
well, it's a crazy story. So right after I did the Strowman match, I get to the back, and Arn Anderson was the agent for the match. He was like, hey man, you made my job easy. He's like, Vince wants to see you. And I was like, Vince wants to see me. I was scared to death because I had walked down the ramp. And when you're an extra talent back in, 2016, I don't know how they handle it now. You're not allowed to walk down the ramp. And I did. I don't know why I did. I just did. So I thought he was going to yell at me for that. And Vince, just it was the best talk with Vince McMahon I've ever had. He was just like, hey man, your facial expressions were great. Your selling was great. Your verbiage was great. I'm going to be in touch with you. I'm probably going to hire you. And I'm like, yeah. So 6 weeks later, to get to your question, they flew me in for SmackDown. No, I drove to SmackDown. It was in Philly because I live in Baltimore. It's only 2 hours. So I drove to SmackDown. That was the next time they invited me. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this. AJ's looking for a partner. AJ Styles, WWE champion at the time, and he was a heel, and he was looking for a partner. And like the story was, everyone in the dressing room couldn't stand him, so nobody went to team with him. He was gonna wrestle Dean Ambrose, who was now John Moxley. Obviously, you have to say that, and John Cena in a tag. And so Daniel Bryan appointed me as his partner because no one else wanted to team with AJ, just to kind of play with AJ. Daniel Bryan was the general manager at the time.
Mhm.
So right before the match, the Miz beat me up, and the Miz winded up being AJ's partner. And then they said to me after that, "Hey man, we're going to bring you back to wrestle the Miz in a couple of weeks." And I was like, "Oh man, the Miz is the Intercontinental Champion. This is cool because Miz was the Intercontinental Champion at the time."
Mhm, mhm.
So they brought me back in a couple of weeks. I watched like every Miz match I could to get ready for that. So I'm going into this fully expecting to wrestle the Miz. And I get in there, and Adam Pearce, first guy, is like, "Hey man, what if I told you you were pinning the world champion tonight?" And I said, I would call you a liar, and just laughed at me. He goes, I wouldn't lie to you, James. And he walked away, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I just like kind of blew him off, and he's a great guy. I don't Pierce is an amazing guy. And then I'm sitting in catering, just eating food or whatever. And AJ came up, he put his arm around me. He's like, hey man, it's me and you tonight. And I was like, why is everybody playing with me? That's what I told him. He goes, I'm not playing with you. And then it didn't really hit me until he handed me the booking sheet, the rundown for the show, and I saw it. And once I saw that Moxley was going to be the Ambrose was going to be the referee, I was like, oh my god, we're really doing this.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
yeah.
Wow, wow. And so that was, you kind of answered my second part of that question, but now I want to know, despite all of this, you still didn't have a contract guaranteed to you,
Um,
or was
I
it?
I did. They just wanted me to keep it hush hush because eventually we did that ladder match on SmackDown where I won my contract.
Sure.
So they let me finish up my indies. They just told me to be quiet. I didn't tell anyone, not
Right.
even like my parents. That like, hey, I feel like everyone kind of knew, like that. Hey, you're there every week. They're usually on TV every week. You pin the world champion. Like, they're going to sign you. And I kept working my regular job. Like I wrestled AJ Styles for the WWE title and flew in. And I put in my 2 weeks of my regular job. I used to work with people with special needs. When I was an independent wrestler, I had a regular job. And I was like, I wrestled for WWE title and flew in to work the next morning and went right to work. And like I remember, like a couple of guys were like, "Why are you here? You just wrestled for the WWE title last night. Like, why are you here?" I'm like, I'm honoring my commitments. That's all I would say. I wouldn't say, "Hey, like I'm already signed," like, or this is like because I knew the story was getting there where they were going to do the ladder match for the contract.
Amazing, amazing. And speaking of ladder matches, at the 2017 Money in the Bank ladder match, during the women's match, you helped your buddy Carmella win the briefcase. Now, I have to ask you, how does it feel to be part of such rich history when the event is discussed? You are mentioned, you are synonymous with Money in the Bank. Was this the original plan for that match?
Yes, and they didn't tell me to the day of that it was actually happening, but we had rehearsed Money in the Bank. And me just watching wrestling my whole life and understanding it, they like when we did the rehearsal, they had every girl climb the ladder and grab the briefcase, right?
Mm,
And then before we left, they're like, "Hey James, climb up the ladder and grab the briefcase real quick, like in case we have you like teasing, climbing the ladder at the show." I was like, "Oh, okay," and I climb. And I remember after that, I went up and pulled Carmella aside. Carmella and I always got along. I absolutely love her. I'm going to publicly congratulate her and Graves. I call him SJK because that was his indie name, and I knew him way back then. We used to be on shows together. Well, and obviously they're expecting, and two great people. I'm glad that they got together because I love them both. They're both amazing people. So I just want to congratulate them. But I remember telling her, I said, "You're going to win the match. I'm going to help you win the match." I said, we're like in rehearsal, I was like, "There's a reason why they just had me do that." I was like, "I'm going to help you win the match." And she went, "James, it's the first ever women's Money in the Bank. They're not going to have a guy grab the briefcase." And I said, "That's probably why they're going to do it. They like that controversy." And then I remember the day of the Money in the Bank when they had the meeting, they said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. The reason why we're doing it is 2 weeks later, an episode of SmackDown, we're going to do another one, and like it's going to help us pop a rating for SmackDown. The controversy will be good." And, they explained it to everyone why we were doing this. And so we always knew we were going to do the second Money in the Bank on SmackDown 2 weeks later. We always knew that. Like, see, the internet's a funny place, man. They like something gets on there and then people just go with it. Like, oh, they had to redo it because the backlash of James grabbing it. No, was playing the whole time. And so I remember I told her that day, the day of the Money Back, I said, "Hey, I just spoke to Laurinaitis because he was the one that told me. He told me first. He's like, 'Hey, you're going to climb up there as quick as you can, grab it, throw it down to Carmella. We got to rehearse that.'" And I told her, she's like, "Really? Like, we're like, I'm winning it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I told you. I'm going to grab it and give it to you. Like, it's going to be great." And that was just me, like, again, watching wrestling my whole life and knowing, like, oh, this is what's happening, you know?
Sure. And it's kind of like the first part in a two-part, as of now, long-term storytelling is how I like to look at it, because storyline, you were banned, and then you returned in 2018 to help her finish the job against Asuka. Now, I know a lot of fans that want to know, that might not know, and the reason might be out there, but what was the actual reason for your absence at that time?
Well, I think so. It was never like told to me, but man, it was a roller coaster ride. So, um, my, she had the Money in the Bank contract, right? So what does
Right.
she really need James Ellsworth for? She has a guarantee in her hand.
Yep.
So they're like, "Man, we really don't have anything for you. Gave me the 90-day thing, like they're gonna release me, this and that. Call me before the 90 days is up. Hey man, we're gonna bring you back." I said, before the 90 days is up, we're gonna, finish your deal, this and that. Like I like they honored my whole deal, which I appreciated so much. And I was like, "Well, I just like took like, 60 indie dates." They're like, "No, go ahead and do that. Just don't sign anywhere else. Like, we're gonna bring you back." And they didn't tell me what for. This was February of 2018. So I'm like, and then I saw that, like, again, sometimes it works for you and works against you. Then I saw Braun Strowman was going to have a mystery partner WrestleMania for the tag titles against Sheamus and Cesaro. I'm like, "Oh crap, maybe they're bringing me back for that." Like, maybe I'm going to be Strowman's mystery. But like, I remember, like, I was hoping and praying that was going to happen, and then when it didn't happen, I was like, that's a bummer. And then once I saw Carmella was wrestling Asuka and Money in the Bank, I said, "They're going to be calling me any day now," because, Asuka only lost one match at that time, and, she was
Mhm.
running through everybody.
Mhm.
I'm like, I feel like I'm going to come back and help her beat Asuka. And then they called me, like, it was the day after the Backlash pay-per-view that year in May. I think Carmella, like, wrestled Charlotte on there and um, won or whatever. She cheated to win. I don't remember how, but I know they called me the day after, like, "Hey, bring you back Money in the Bank. Like, obviously, you were a big part of it last year. You're going to be a big part of it this year." And I was like, and, they didn't tell me what I was coming back for. They're like, "What? You're either going to be involved in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match again, or you're going to be involved in the Carmella Asuka." And I was like, I was going, man, I hope they pair me back with Carmella because I really thought that worked well, her and I together. And that's what wound up happening. Um, and then it was a lot of fun on coming back and taking the Oscar mask off and all that. And that's what WWE is about. I know we hear a lot of people say it's about those moments, like you touched on earlier, that Money in the Bank moment I had at the first ever women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Every year when they have a women's Money in the Bank ladder match, there's going to be somebody going, "Hey, remember the first one?" And the guy, what was his name? Ellsworth. He grabbed it and gave it to the Carmella.
That's right.
So
That's right. And it didn't stop there with Carmella and Asuka, because at Extreme Rules in 2018, you were suspended in a shark cage above the ring in a match between the two. Now, this might be a controversial question, and I hope you don't take offense to it, but some people believe that when a wrestler is placed in that cage, that it could mean that that person is serving a punishment for something they did backstage. Now, such was evident with Enzo Mori. Seeming by how you're talking about how your WWE life unfolded, that might not be the case here.
No, no. This was I remember they came to me with the idea like, hey, are you scared of heights? Are you comfortable with this? If not, we'll do something else. I said, nah, man, it's great. I was like, you know, I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. Like when people would get suspended above the ring in shark cages, like, you know, Jim Cornette and the NWA and stuff like that. Like I always loved that. And to
Mhm.
get to do another thing I grew up watching, like was, you know, but they completely came to me and asked me if I was comfortable with it. And I said, absolutely, I will do it. And then I remember getting the arena that day. Hey, we're gonna have you hang upside down. I'm like, wait, what? Like, how's that gonna work? And they showed me how it was done. And it's completely safe. Or else I wouldn't have done it, but it was completely safe. And again, a lot of fun. That whole, like I said, that whole Carmella Ellsworth thing, we did. Like, if you add up all the time we had on TV together, it was 13 months. Her and I did it together. So a little over a year, her all together. Her and I did. I feel like we could have got another 11 months out of it and did 2 years of it. Like it was, there are so many ways they could spin that, I think. And I really enjoyed my time with her. Absolutely.
Love that. Love that. And so I want to ask you, do you ever see yourself back in the WWE? Have you had any renewed talks with them now that Triple H is in charge?
Well, man, you just, again, you never know. Like I was watching Raw, I think it was the last Raw, October, the first Raw or November, and I'm just sitting there watching it, like you probably were, right? And there we go. And Dominic Mysterio said, "I'm this generation's Eddie Guerrero,"
Mm.
and AJ Styles said, "No, you're not. You're more like this generation's James Ellsworth." Said my name, and I was like, "Whoa, that's cool," you know. And I remember I texted AJ the next day because I still keep in touch with, you know, some people there, and AJ's one of them. And I said, "Man, thank you for saying that. Like, that was cool." And like, I made a video reacting to it, put it on TikTok or whatever. And he said, "Man, I loved your video." He's like, "I'm glad, you know, we got to say your name and all that." And so, man, the fact that, yeah, I've been gone for almost 5 years now. I've been on TV since like, I think the last thing I did for them was SmackDown 1000. It was just like a backstage that got put on digital and all that. Like, so almost 5 years. Like they mentioned my name, and you know they mention me every now and then. Like over the years, people have like Sasha Banks, Dana Brooke, Alexa Bliss have all said to Carmella like, "Oh, if it wasn't for the chinless guy or this or that, you wouldn't have, you know, ever been champion." Or like every year since I left. And then James AJ um, actually said my full name on Raw, which was cool. I'll be 40 years old next year. Obviously, I always felt like, I mean, I loved playing the James Ellsworth
Mm.
character. It was so much fun. Always felt like I didn't go through NXT, and this is just my feeling. I've never been told this, but they have time and money invested in people that went through the Performance Center and NXT, and I didn't go through that system. So I was always like an outsider that just kind of caught wind with that Strowman match.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was always grateful they found a spot for me because I was never in the plans. You know, they found a spot for me for a couple of years. I had 2 good years there. I feel like the Ellsworth character is somebody you could bring back for a Royal Rumble appearance or another Money in the Bank appearance or something with AJ or something with Strowman or something with Carmella, and they all still work there. So since they all three still work there, and I have history with them, they're always if they did, you know, like AJ Styles, this is your life, or Carmella, this is your life.
Right.
So you never say never. I feel like Carlito, for instance, he's been gone 10, 11 years, and now over the last 2 or 3 years, he's been there twice, and it looks like it might be more. I don't know. Um, so you never say never. MVP came back after several years. Several people have, and I don't know. I feel like I could be. I would love the Ellsworth character to be that, you know, in the future to be a Bobby the Brain Heenan or Jim Cornette esque heater or manager for somebody like I was for Carmella. It worked well, and you know, I just keep doing my thing, man. I keep staying positive. I keep, you know, working hard on the independence. Like I said, I love enjoying time with my family. So whatever happens, I was very grateful to live my dream and be a part of WWE for a few years. I'll never forget it. And absolutely, if they called and wanted me to do a cameo appearance or even more, I would definitely be there for them.
Amazing. Amazing. So now I'd love to know kind of a multifaceted question here. Have you had talks with AEW or Impact? And overall, what is your opinion on the current product today?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. So Impact, I did some Impact when I, left WWE. I wrestled Eli Drake, who's now LA Knight, at a
Sure.
Bound for Glory pay-per-view. I did some they had some joint shows with other independents Impact, and they used me a couple times. And oh dude, Scott D'Amore is a great guy. I had fun working for him. AEW I've never talked to. Of course, Chris Jericho is I always call him like my big brother in wrestling. I still keep in touch with him. But I've never asked him, hey man, can you give me a job at AEW? Because I don't ask questions like those. But man, my heart's always gonna be with WWE. That's what I grew up watching. That's the product I've always loved. And wrestling these days, I always feel like less is more. Just my opinion, there's too much of it. It's on almost every day, and that's great for a lot of fans that enjoy it. For me, I can't keep up with it all. I get burnt out on it quick. I love certain things. I absolutely love the a bloodline storyline.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I pay attention to everything that they do because it's such an amazing story. On the AW side, obviously, MJF's killing it. He's one of a kind. So I like watching anything he does. So to answer your question, things that I'm interested in and things that are entertaining me, I will pay attention to. Like right now, LA Knight's killing it. So I
Yeah.
have to, yeah, and when I wrestled him at that Impact pay per view, I said, oh my God, this guy, if given the right opportunity, is going to be one of the biggest stars in the business. And finally, and look, he's, pushing 40, and it's timing's everything, man. And finally, he's getting the big push, and I feel like he's going to be, a world champion at some point. And he deserves it, man. He has the verbiage. He knows how to cut a promo. He looks great. He wrestles great. He's got everything you need. So yeah, to answer your question, I watch a little bit of everything, and I pay attention to what entertains me.
Sure. I love that. And to be entertained is definitely not an easy task sometimes, but I think that with the great creative, any company can really excel. So I want to switch gears just to one more thing and ask you, what are your goals for the future? What do you see yourself doing? Are you going to open up maybe your own wrestling school if you haven't yet? And obviously you're always keeping the door open for WWE. But what are your goals for the future?
Well, honestly, as of right now, yeah, as far as wrestling school goes, never say never. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm wrestling just about every week. I really during the week enjoy being a father, enjoy being a husband. Like my wife's helped me become the best version of myself, and I I have a great home life, and I'm so blessed with that. Not a lot of people are blessed with that, and I am. So just always making sure my daughters are taken care of and doing good in life is first and foremost the most important thing to me. But yeah, I'll be 39 in December, 40 next year. So, still wrestling on the independents, but I'm not going to be 65 years old wrestling on the indies. Nothing against anybody that does. I just don't want to do that. But right now, just keep working hard, keep, positive attitude, and just, enjoying one day at a time. So,
Amazing. Well, to round off this interview, I always ask my guests this one question. I think it's an important one. What message do you have for up and coming wrestlers trying to make it in this business that is absolutely the most difficult business, I think?
it is not an easy business, and that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So, when you're an independent wrestler, and I think, man, and it's different than I started in 2002, right? And over 20 years ago, so 21 years. And back then, I went to a great wrestling school, had a great trainer in Axel Rotten who had traveled the world, been a part of the big companies. And that's the advice I would give anybody aspiring to be a wrestler. Hey, go get trained by people that have been in the big companies that have made a living wrestling. That's who you want to learn from. When I was an independent wrestler before WWE, if I was on a show with Tatanka or Matt Hardy or Shane Douglas or whoever it was, I would go ask them for advice. I would ask them to watch my match. I would beg them to tell me what I did wrong, because I'm like, these are the guys that have been with the big companies. That's where I want to go. And it wasn't, obviously I'm 5'8", 165 pounds, like, and I don't look like I belong on GQ magazine. Like, so it was not easy for me to make it to WWE. And I really feel like I made it there because I got the knowledge from the people who were there. And I think a lot of times independent wrestlers, a minority, not a majority, like think they should automatically get all this money and they should automatically be in these spots. Like, no, you have to learn how to do it correctly. You have to learn what separates you from other people on TV. And the only way you're going to learn that is to get the tutelage of people who have done it before you. So if you're going to wrestling school, find a school where the people have done it for a living, have been in big companies. And there's plenty of them out there. There's Creed Pro that has Brian Myers, who was Kurt Hawkins, and Pat Buck, who works for AEW. There's Devon Dudley's school. There's Booker T's school. There's schools all over the country where you can go to and get this tutelage. So go to one of those schools, and there's more of them. Gangrel has a school. There's plenty of them all over the country. Go to one of them and learn from the guys that have been there for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, James, thank you so much for a wonderful, all-encompassing interview. We learned a lot of things today. Very excited to see what you've been up to, and it's very nice to see you. It's great to see you. And a lot of fans are definitely going to be watching this and being like, man, we need more James Ellsworth. And I agree with that statement. So I really do hope WWE brings you back soon, as you were a fixture. You still are a fixture. You're a good person. You're awesome. Thank you so, so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. Remember, any man with two hands has a fighting chance. So.
100%.